SK Gaming, formerly Luminosity, are easily the best team in the world right now and already stand as one of the greatest teams of all time. In fact, now they're in this role, they're even on track to potentially one day become the greatest team of all time if they can continue this level of form, dominance, greatness, and racking up more titles. So from MLG onwards is when this team really hit the form where they were able to become the best team in the world and reach that elite all-time great status because they've won both of the majors. They're, as a result, one of only two teams to ever win back-to-back majors, and they're one of the only three core lineups, as in three players or whatever, to have won more than one major because it was obviously them, Fnatic, and the Envy guys of Happy, Kiyashima, and NBK won two majors each. The big problem is no one knows right now. There's no information being given as to whether there'll be a third major in 2016. And so if there is, they're on with a chance to have the best year ever in Counter-Strike. As it stands yet, we don't currently know how the rest of the year plays out. We just know there's E-League. They're also a team that have won two other tournaments that are notable. One was DreamHack Austin, so I mean maybe that's not as notable because it wasn't international competition, it was just Brazilian and North American teams. But the other tournament, obviously ESL Pro League Season 3, was a very legit big international tournament. I do feel like the majors is incredible. That what they've done there, back-to-back majors, is very, very good, and their level in winning those two majors, very, very high. But I do feel like people have overhyped the second category, which is winning other tournaments, because they have only won two other tournaments. They won DreamHack Austin, not as big a tournament. That's like a Tier 3, Tier 2 type tournament. And they won ESL Pro League, obviously a huge tournament. But beyond that, they've still been very consistent. They were second to ECS. They were only beaten there by that miraculous G2 performance. And so overall, out of the 6 tournaments from Columbus onwards, they have managed to make the finals of 5 of them, and they have won 4. So very, very legit stuff. I've ignored E-League, because even though they played the group stage there, obviously they couldn't play the playoffs because they were disqualified due to not being eligible under the roster rules. Now, if you look at the stats, you'll see just how great this team has been from Columbus onwards. So, over that span of time, they have won 15 out of 17 best of 3 or best of 5 series, which is an 88% win rate in best of 3 or best of 5 series play. Just call it series play. At MLG, they won 3. They lost 1 at Malmo to Tai Lu. They won all of them at Austin. They won 4 at EPL. They went 1-1 at ECS because obviously they lost to G2. And they went undefeated in E-League and in ESL 1 Cologne. In map record, they also have an absolutely stellar record. They have played 60 maps offline from Columbus onwards. And they have won 47 of them, accounting for a 78.33, presumably recurring, win rate in maps, which is absolutely bonkers stuff. I mean, the most they've ever lost at a tournament was EPL Season 3, where they lost to 5 maps. And obviously they've only lost 13 overall. They have won both of their majors, dropping only a single map at each one. They lost to Virtus Pro each time, Cash at MLG, and Columbus and Cobble at Cologne. They've only lost to 7 teams over this span of time. They lost to Virtus Pro, Mouse Sports, Tai Lu, G2, Astralis, NiP, and Cloud9. And their map pool is absolutely phenomenal over this span of time, which is, for me, the SK Gaming era when you really consider it. Because over that time span, you have to remember there were actually 8 maps because we had Inferno at one point in time, but we'll take Inferno out overall. They have a 60% or better win rate on 6 of the 7 maps over this span of time, which is incredible. That means you've got practically the whole map pool. They basically don't have Cash because that's the map that they've put as a permaban after they lost it on a few key occasions. Virtus Pro at Columbus, Mouse Sports and Tai Lu at Malmo. So they switched it up. They made Cash their permaban. So basically their permaban is the one map that they don't have a 60% or better win rate on. Now, on 5 out of the 7 maps that are in the pool, they have a 70% or greater win rate, which is Mirage, Train, Cobble, Overpass, and Nuke. Admittedly, they've only played Nuke 3 times, so we can't go crazy on the sample size there. They've actually won all 3 there. So don't get too nuts on that one. So if we just, for the moment, ignore Nuke, then we can go and look at the other 5 maps that they have a 60% or better win rate on. So Dust 2, which is the map they brought back into their map pool ever since they started banning cash, they have a 62% win rate on, won 5 out of 8 times. Their only losses, Astralis, NiP, and G2, are all good teams on that map, so the Dust 2 actually quietly pretty good. Solid win rate, obviously. Once you get 60% or higher win rate, you're already a good team, one of the best teams on that map in the world, assuming you're playing against international competition like they are. 70% plus is usually like the godlike teams on those maps. Here's where it gets crazy. So I said they have 4 maps that they're 70% win rate or higher on. They have 3 maps that they are over 80% win rate on. So Overpass is statistically their 4th best map. They have a 77.78 win rate percentage on it. Their only losses out of the last 9 times they've played it over this span are against G2, who've been a miracle on this map and have barely played it themselves. Then you've got Cobblestone is their 3rd best map on paper, which has really risen up. It used to be like right down there, like 5th or so. They've only lost to that 2 times out of the last 12, which was to Virtus Pro and G2. And we know Virtus Pro are absolutely one of the best on that map, maybe the best in the world right now. That's at 83% win rate. And then Train is their 2nd best map. They've won 9 out of 10 games on it, only losing to G2, 90% win rate. Then their best map statistically is Mirage, the map that originally put them on the map anyway, back in the days of Kaboom and Keed Stars. They've only lost to Cloud9 on it. They've won 10 out of 11 times, 90.90% win rate. Absolutely bonkers stuff in terms of map pool. And so that's what's actually really interesting, is if you look across how strong their map pool is right now, I think they're the only team that you can say has been the best in the world and one of the all-time greats, who's actually done it without really having a home map. Like, you could say the original NIP was like that, because there only used to be 5 maps and they used to be able to play them all. But again, there were only 5 maps. There wasn't the 7, and also it wasn't as crazy back then in terms of like as many other strong teams, so they weren't always having to rely on that one map in that particular sense. And obviously early NIP never used to lose anyway, so they used to win your map and their map. So I think what's interesting is, unlike Fnatic, who did it with Inferno for so long, unlike Envious, who did it with Dust 2, unlike all these different teams, I think that they've been the best and one of the all-time greats without having to have a home map. Like, what's happened is they've managed to get a deep map pool of elite picks that they are the best in the world or among the best on. And the 4 obvious ones are Mirage, Cobble, Overpass, and Train. Those 4 maps that I listed off that are 70% win rate or more. And you look at where they've been in terms of picks themselves, and their own map pick has shifted. They don't just go with the same one. So you look over the last few tournaments, and I calculated it. Okay, they've had Overpass 7 times, they picked that themselves. Mirage, they picked 5 times. Cobble, they picked 3 times. Train, they picked 2 times. So against specific opponents, they pick their map to go into what they want there. So absolutely fantastic a way to be a champion as well. It's not like you're just relying on one map and you have to get that map in that particular sense. It's never been the case for them. Whereas in the past, part of the reason why Fnatic was so incredible and were the best team of all time is because they had the home map of Inferno, but everyone else liked to play or were willing to play Inferno and would rather ban out other stuff. And therefore, Fnatic could play it and could pick it as often as they wanted to. Now, you go and look at their team, and you look down the lineup they have, and is it any surprise they're the best team in the world? They have arguably the best player, coldzera. I mean, I've always understood people's context for that. He is absolutely one of the all-time great players. They have the best in-game leader, for my money, which is Fallen. What an absolutely fantastic mind for the game. And they have the best AWPer, which is Fallen as well. So they already have 3 of the positions that you can have in the game, the best in the world there, arguably, depending on who you are. Now, in terms of their rivals, they do have rivals, and people who can beat them and people who can play them close. And that's what's interesting as well, that they have been so very good over this period of time and won so much and had such incredible map win rate and series win rate and map pool, and yet they do have legit rivals. It's not like they have no one and that they're always just beating everyone down. I mean, Fnatic used to beat them all the time. They've never beaten Fnatic in a Best of X series, but Fnatic can never face them from Columbus onwards because Fnatic never gets far enough in the tournament to face them in the finals or the semis or whatever. Instead, it's always Luminosity on the other side of the bracket, and it's Luminosity getting to the final, and then Luminosity winning or making the final, and Fnatic not doing so. So therefore, even if Fnatic might beat them, we don't know if that psychological edge is still there. Fnatic aren't good enough to face them anyway, so that doesn't really count. They're a rival, but they don't play them anymore. G2 are the most interesting rival in as much as they've actually only won 4 out of 9 maps against this G2 lineup in this era, and so G2 actually have a winning record over them. Obviously have won ECS over them, took them very close to EPL. So that's very interesting as a specific matchup. But G2 is a team where we're not quite sure of their pedigree yet. We want to see how they last. They've been very hot the last couple of months, but will they last 2 more months and still be there? So as a result, will they be able to make it deep in tournaments and potentially be the dark horse matchup that can kind of be the kryptonite to the SK guys? Or will G2 become legit themselves and then we'll have a real battle for the titles? That's what I'm still waiting to find out. For me, the legit rival at the moment for the SK guys has to be Virtus Pro. And even though they usually beat Virtus Pro, that's because Virtus Pro can not only make it deep in tournaments every time, we know that, but then are playing these guys very closely and in fantastic series. So they're 4-2 in maps against Virtus Pro. They've obviously won the 2 series that they played at the majors against them, and Virtus Pro scored the only map losses for the guys from SK at those 2 majors. Virtus Pro's problem over the last few months has just been that they can't qualify for offline tournaments, and so those 2 tournaments, EPL Season 3 and ECS, there was no Virtus Pro there, so we never got to see them play more. Now, Na'Vi were a solid rival before. Na'Vi always used to beat them in 2015, then finally they overcame it at Starladder Season 14 at the beginning of the year, where they beat them in the group stage. But since then, they've had some key wins over Na'Vi. Obviously, they beat them in IM Katowice semi-final, they beat them in the final of MLG. Problem is that a team like Na'Vi themselves didn't qualify for offline tournaments, so they weren't at EPL, they weren't at ECS. At Cologne, they couldn't reach the finals, they couldn't play the guys from SK. So I still feel like Na'Vi, like VP, could match up very well and be an interesting matchup. Na'Vi's problem is they've got the Fnatic problem where they're not reaching that point in time. So really, the only rivals at the moment, you have to say, for the guys from SK, the legit ones, are G2 because they have a matchup advantage somehow, and then VP because they just match up very well and it's a real war every time they play. So they have rivals and people that can stop them. It's just that overall, they're besting the field. Now, in terms of where they already stack up against the all-time great teams, so I had my top 20 list that I made a while ago, and I already have this team. It was on Gfinity, by the way, if you want to look it up. I already have these guys as the 4th best team of all time. I mean, they've got the 2 majors. I've put them above Very Games 2013. I put them below LDLC/Envious late 2014, early 2015. Reason being, okay, those guys, I'm on about the lineup that just won DreamHack Winner 2014, the Kiyashima and Shox lineup. Now, it's true that that team was only briefly the best team in the world early in the year, and only every now and then could steal the top spot from Fnatic, and overall it was Fnatic's era, so overall Fnatic is the best team of all time. Even so, first of all, Envious was playing in the Fnatic era, Fnatic the best team of all time, so you're still doing very well despite that. And you have to remember, like I said, this team of SK Gaming really has only played 6 tournaments. They played E-League as well, but not the playoffs. So they played 6 tournaments in their prime, and they won 2 majors, sure, and then they won 1 third tournament, so 3 international tournaments, and then one that's like DreamHack Austin, so that's okay, and then they've had finals and not obviously a good performance at Malmo. That's not as sick as when you consider that LDLC won a major, and then they also had 14 straight top 4s to start their lineup. They had a bunch of tournament wins, many finals, so I still have Envious above them. I still think there needs to be more work done padding with the resume for the SK guys and potentially winning more big tournaments. So that's the thing. They are in the hunt. They're on the trajectory to one day maybe be the best team of all time. But to do so, to overtake Envious, to overtake NIP, to overtake Fnatic, I mean, first of all, a 3rd major would be nice, especially 3 in a row would be incredible, obviously, but another major in their history would be an excellent way to pad it out. They've got to win more Tier 1 tournaments that aren't majors. They've got to get some more of those. So while you're the number 1 team, you've got to get more wins under your belt. That's where they're lacking, but they've only won 1 tournament outside of the majors. Basically, that's a big international tournament. They need more titles in general, but they also need to continue that excellence, that consistently making top 4, finals, playing well against the top teams. If they can do so, they can become the best team of all time. And so it's interesting now because it is the SK Gaming era, and I want to see them in the next E-League. I want to see them at all the next offline finals. I want to see them in the next majors, see if they can fulfill that potential and become the best team of all time, because they've got everything there. The incredible win rate in Best of X series, the insanely deep map pool with amazing map win percentages, the rivals, it's matching up at the moment, so that as long as the Fnatic and Na'Vis of the world to keep out of the way, they can win these tournaments. They've obviously won all these majors. They've got arguably the best player called Zera. They've got the best in-game leader. They've got the best AWPer. I want to see if they do it because they're an incredible team.